Imagine waking up one morning and discovering a trail of footprints in the snow, stretching for miles. Now imagine something even stranger. The footprints appeared to cross rooftops, pass through narrow gaps, and continue across places where no ordinary animal should have been able to walk. No one saw what made them. No one knew where they came from. And when the strange tracks began appearing in newspapers, people across England gave them a terrifying name: the Devil's Footprints. This is the story of one of the strangest mysteries ever recorded in Victorian England. And more than 170 years later, we still do not know exactly what left those tracks behind. It was the winter of 1855. A heavy snowfall had covered parts of southern England during the night. When morning came, something strange had appeared across the snow. A trail of unusual footprints stretched through the landscape. They were not just found in one place. Reports came from several villages across Devon. People followed the tracks, trying to understand what could have made them. But the footprints seemed to continue in an almost impossible path. They crossed gardens, passed through small openings, and appeared beside walls and buildings. In some places, the tracks seemed to disappear, only to reappear on the other side. There was no obvious beginning, and there was no obvious end. For the people who discovered them, this was not simply a strange set of footprints. It was a mystery that seemed to have appeared overnight. As more people examined the tracks, the mystery became even stranger. The footprints appeared to form a remarkably long trail. In some reports, they seemed to continue for more than 100 miles. But the distance was not the only strange thing. The tracks appeared to pass over walls, through narrow spaces, and across rooftops. They did not seem to follow the normal path a person or animal would take. And there was another unsettling detail. The snow around the footprints appeared largely untouched. There were no obvious tracks showing where someone had approached them, or where they had left. It was as if whatever created the footprints had simply moved forward, without leaving any other trace behind. Soon, people began asking the same question: what kind of creature could have made a trail like this? The strange footprints quickly became the subject of conversation. People wanted answers. What had crossed the snow during the night? Was it an animal? Was it a person? Or was there something else behind the strange trail? As stories spread, new reports began to appear. The mystery eventually reached local newspapers, and the footprints were given a frightening nickname: the Devil's Footprints. For people living in Victorian England, the idea of something mysterious moving through the darkness was deeply unsettling. There was no scientific explanation that everyone could agree on, and without photographs or modern recording equipment, the only evidence people had was the trail itself. But the more people talked about the footprints, the more extraordinary the story became. Some descriptions suggested that the tracks had crossed places where no ordinary animal should have been able to leave such a trail. And soon, the mystery was no longer just about footprints in the snow. It had become a story about something that nobody could identify. But what could have actually left the footprints? Over the years, many explanations have been suggested. Some believed the tracks were made by a strange animal. Others thought they could have been created by birds, moving across the snow in an unusual way. Some even suggested that the footprints were caused by weather, or by objects being dragged across the frozen ground. But none of these explanations seemed to satisfy everyone. The biggest problem was the sheer variety of places where the tracks were reported. The footprints were described near houses, along roads, across fields, and in areas separated by obstacles. And because the original evidence was never preserved, modern researchers cannot simply return to the scene and examine the footprints themselves. What we have today are written accounts, newspaper reports, and memories passed down from the people who witnessed them. And that creates another mystery. How much of the story is exactly what happened, and how much became exaggerated as the legend spread? There is one important problem with the Devil's Footprint story. Much of what we know comes from newspapers and later retellings. The original footprints are long gone. There are no photographs of the tracks, no preserved samples, and no scientific investigation was carried out while the footprints were still visible. That means we have to be careful. Some of the most dramatic details may have changed, as the story was repeated over the years. But that does not mean the entire event was invented. People really did report strange footprints across the snow in Devon. Newspapers really did publish accounts of the mystery, and the strange tracks became a genuine local story. The question is, what did people actually see? Were the footprints made by an ordinary animal, and simply misunderstood? Were several different tracks combined into one story? Or did something unusual happen, that people at the time simply could not explain? We may never know for certain. And that uncertainty is what keeps the devil's footprints alive. So what really happened in Devon that winter? One possibility is surprisingly simple. The footprints may have been made by an animal, or even several different animals, whose tracks looked unusual after snow and melting ice changed their shape. Another possibility is that some of the reports became exaggerated. A strange trail in one village could have been connected to another unusual trail somewhere else. As the story spread, the mystery may have grown larger with every retelling. But there is one thing we can say with confidence. Something unusual was reported across the snowy landscape of Devon in 1855. People saw the tracks. They followed them. They talked about them. And newspapers helped turn the strange event into a legend. More than a century and a half later, we have no original footprints to examine. No photograph can show us exactly what happened. And no single explanation has become universally accepted. Perhaps the answer was completely ordinary. Perhaps the truth became distorted over time. Or perhaps, we simply lost the evidence before we had a chance to understand it. And maybe that is what makes the story so fascinating. The footprints disappeared, but the mystery never did. More than 170 years have passed, and the footprints are long gone. The snow melted, the witnesses disappeared, and the original evidence was lost to time. Today, we can examine the story with modern science, but science cannot recreate what was never recorded properly. Perhaps the devil's footprints were nothing more than unusual animal tracks, changed by snow and ice. Perhaps the story grew larger as people repeated it. Or perhaps, something happened that night, that we simply no longer have enough evidence to understand. We may never know, but one thing remains certain. On a winter morning in 1855, people looked down at the snow, and saw something they could not explain. The footprints vanished, the mystery remained, and after all these years, the question is still the same. What really left the devil's footprints?